Overpaying for anything sucks, especially socks, so why pay $45 for a single pair of grip socks when you can spend less than half? Pure Grip Socks Pro feature our best materials for optimal fit, moisture wicking, and performance at a fair price, just $16.99 a pair at puregripsocks.com.
What if I told you there was a way to get the new X Speedportal.1 for nearly 50% off right now? Well, you can, sort of. And the reason why I say that is because instead of paying $250 for the FG variation, you can pay $130 for the indoor or turf model. That of course isn't going to get you the same sole plate or stud pattern, but the Speedskin 2.0 upper is identical on this football boot that costs nearly half as much, which is pretty crazy when you think about it. But just because they're cheaper, it doesn't necessarily make them good, which is exactly what we're going to be going over in this review: the good, the bad, and whether or not these would be a good choice for you if you're on the market for a pair of indoor or turf boots, including how they fit and feel on feet. So if you're interested in learning more, please stick around. And if you are interested in a pair for yourself, you can pick them up below their normal retail price by way of some exclusive SR4U coupon codes by checking out the first link down below. And as per your request, you guys asked for more indoor and turf reviews. I'm trying to make that happen. If you want to continue to see them reviewed on the channel, please drop a like on this video and make sure you're subscribed along with hitting that little bell notification so you don't miss out on my reviews of all the latest football boots of 2022. So starting with the upper, if you've seen any of my reviews of the Speedportal.1, there really isn't anything new to present here. It is their new Speedskin 2.0 upper that is admittedly more plastic and rigid on the 0.1 versus the Plus, but there is no Plus option for the Speedportal in indoor or turf variations as of yet, and I don't necessarily see that changing anytime soon. Regardless, the upper is super thin, really pingy on the ball in terms of providing no extra padding whatsoever, but if we are comparing it to past X models, it probably compares more closely to the X Ghosted series than it does the X Speedflow series that this technically replaces. You're going to find that micro texturing on the surface that truthfully you really don't feel on the ball. They just feel thin with a little bit of additional grip. And then of course, like the regular 0.1 model, you are going to get your central lacing system with a one-piece upper construction, that elasticated prime knit across the top of the foot as your one-piece enclosure, and of course a low-cut design. Even the heel area remains pretty consistent in terms of depth as well as shape. You'll notice that you don't have the speed wings or stability wings over top of the carbon fiber because you don't have a plastic heel counter. Instead, you do have that visible carbon fiber that sits directly on top of an internal plastic heel counter. So what that carbon is actually doing other than looking cool, I'm not entirely sure, but again, the shaping and feel of this heel counter is pretty well identical. And then just like the regular 0.1, something that I'm not much of a fan of, you have tons and tons of extra padding in the heel with this microfiber liner. I just think it's a little bit overdone to the point where it feels a little bit sloppy and borderline insecure. It's not that it's bad, but I definitely don't think it's as good as what they've done in the past with the Adidas X series. And then the insole, which I think is a little bit disappointing, is technically removable. They've glued it in a little bit. Okay, maybe they glued it in pretty good. It's a much cheaper insole than what you're going to find on the FG model in that it's a flat piece of foam, a cheaper quality foam as well, and then it has a soft lining material on the surface that I don't really have any issue with, but it's typically something that you would find on a much less expensive football boot. As for the midsole and outsole, it's a direct carryover to what we saw on the indoor and turf Speedflow models, and that you have this light strike foam midsole, which is most thick towards the heel and then tapers quite significantly as you get to the base of the forefoot to where you're pretty much sat directly on the ground. The light strike foam is really low profile, so it's not really elevating your heel all that much, and it does a pretty nice job of providing some impact protection. But in general, especially in the turf variation, you shouldn't need a ton of extra cushion. It should more or less be built into the playing surface, at least to some extent. And then as far as the turf outsole is concerned, it has rubber nubs in the heel, rubber nubs through the forefoot and toe box area, a nice tall rubber lip running through the entire forefoot and toe box section as well, strengthening the bond between the upper and the outsole. And like I've said so many times when it comes to turf traction patterns, they all feel and perform pretty well the same, so nothing to complain about here. You do also have the option of getting this as an indoor boot if you want to play in indoor courts or on a really flat, hard surface like concrete or in a street type environment. But as far as the turf outsole is concerned, this is going to be ideal for kind of like an older rough carpet turf type material. You can also get away with using this on artificial grass if you just find that you're having issues with stud pressure and general comfort, especially on an outdoor artificial grass pitch in the summer when the surface temperature is really hot. This is going to be much easier on your feet, and all that rubber is going to help to dissipate that heat, making for a more comfortable experience. Or even if you play on really hard ground where it's mostly dirt rather than grass, I think something like a turf outsole is more or less ideal rather than trying to wear studs on a playing surface where the studs have nowhere to dig in. Which brings us to the weight, where you might be wondering, since the turf version has the same upper as the FG model, surely they can't be that far apart in weight. Unfortunately, they are, and that is simply down to the fact that rubber is quite a heavy material versus the very lightweight plastic and carbon you'll find on the FG model. We'll throw them both on a scale, both in the same size, 9.5 US, starting with the FG model, and you can see that they weigh in at a lightweight 7.05 ounces, the equivalent of 200 grams exactly. Change the scale back to ounces, and we'll throw on the Turf 0.1 variation, and you can see that they weigh in at 10.35 ounces, the equivalent of 293 grams, nearly 100 grams more, which is a significant amount of weight that you will definitely feel. Not on the particularly light side of things as far as turf shoes go, but definitely not overly heavy either. Around 10 ounces is what to expect for most turf models, so I really don't have an issue with this. On feet, the turf version of the Speedportal.1 feels pretty good, but also suffers from the same issues that I have with the FG model, predominantly in the heel. I just feel like there's way too much padding, and it, for lack of a better word, kind of just feels a little bit bulky. Not to the point where there's issues with slippage or anything like that, but I just think it feels very, very heavily padded compared to the rest of the upper, which is remarkably thin. I think because the outsole doesn't have that Carbotex insert and in general is just a lot more flexible than the FG model, the upper in turn ends up feeling more flexible as well. It doesn't require as much break-in time, or at least as much time to get used to the feel of the upper for the boots to feel comfortable. They are more comfortable out of the box than the FG model. And with the laces tied tight, the lockdown through the midfoot is really solid, so nothing to complain about there. The one thing I will say in regards to the fit in terms of what's different is that the sizing, because of that rubber lip, as you'll find with a lot of indoor and turf boots, doesn't allow your toes to hang over quite as much. So I'm wearing these in my usual size 9.5 US, but I could definitely get away with going in a size 10, half a size up, depending on how I wanted them to fit. If I wanted that little bit of extra breathing room because of that rubber lip, going up half a size wouldn't necessarily be a terrible idea. And as far as width is concerned, they're going to fit most people. They're definitely most snug through the midfoot, but as long as you don't have excessively wide feet, these are going to work for most foot types. So in conclusion, can I recommend the indoor or turf variation of the Speedportal.1? And the answer to that question is a simple yes. At $130 versus $250, I think the shortcomings of this football boot are much easier to understand at a price tag that is nearly 50% less. With that said, if you have a pair of these in the FG variation and you have any need for one with an indoor or turf outsole, obviously you're not going to get that Carbotex insert in the sole plate, which I think is probably the best feature of the Speedportal line right now. You're still getting the same upper, you're still getting a very similar shape, you're getting the exact same feel for the ball, and I think there's definite value to that if you want some consistency as you go from one playing surface to the next. As a standalone pair of turf boots, as solid as I think they are, if you're after something in the speed category, the Mercurial Vapor 15 Pro at $10 less, in my opinion, is just a better overall pair, but it really does depend on what you're looking for. I think these are solid for the money, but they're certainly not perfect.